I should have been recording this, so. You're familiar with this formula. That's to help us decide on our monthly payment, right? And then I want to go back and review what all of these things are, what the variables stand for. I do want to review that with you guys. But then let's talk about how we figure out our total interest paid in this particular case. All right, P, remember, is our principal. In other words, the amount that's borrowed. Remember, I'm going to put a little note here. Take out down payment first. So if you've paid a down payment on the house, then that's money you've already paid. Right? So when we start thinking about what our monthly payment is, we're not thinking about what we've already paid. We've got to consider what's left over, that type of thing, right? Remember, R is our rate, our interest rate, and we write that as a decimal. What other letters are in there? The T, and that's time in years. Okay, so think about what this formula is saying. If we're doing our monthly interest, our total interest paid, then we need to take our monthly payment times the number of months, and then we are taking away our principal to actually figure out our interest that's paid, right? Remember that down payment comes off of that principal. Okay. It's messy trying to plug into that formula, so if you recall, so we got to be really careful with that. So you've got to practice plugging in with the formula. All right, Heather's planning to buy, need to borrow $190,000, 30-year period, APR is 6.4. What will the monthly payment be? What will the total interest be over 30 years? Guys, this is shocking to me how much interest you end up paying. It's kind of crazy. Okay. So in the formula, yes, you got to kind of think through this, and you've got to be careful plugging this in to calculator. So we are doing what? 0.064 over 12 times 1 plus 0.064 over 12 raised to the 12 times 30, because it's 30 years, all over 1 plus 0.064 all over 12 raised to the 12 times 30, and then minus 1. That formula is just crazy. Yes, you will get that formula, but you gotta, like I said, the main thing is being careful and practicing and making sure you can get that plugged in correctly on your calculator. Try that plug in for me, please, guys, on your calculators. Let's see if you get that. That's just your monthly payment. I think that was the first question. What will our monthly payment be? And then what will our total interest over 30 years be? Let's go through that process. Oops. Okay, so for the total interest, we're going to do this 1188.46 times 360 months, right? And then minus the 190,000. And that gets you Whoops. $237,845.60. So the house is 190,000 and the interest is 237,000. So guys, that's a very realistic thing. If you think about that, you're paying way more interest than the actual value of the money that you're borrowing. So what would be the advantage of a 15-year versus a 30-year? What do you think? I mean, part of it is just knowing whether or not you can pay. Obviously, your monthly payments are going to be less if you're doing this over 30 years as opposed to 15 years. So for a 30-year, payment is less each month. What's the advantage of a 15-year?
You end up not paying as much.
You're not going to pay as much interest, right? Not paying as much interest. Usually usually interest rates, if you're borrowing it for a 15-year versus a 30-year, will be a little bit different also, just for what it's worth. Okay, let's look at a couple more examples here. Let's look at one more here. Tara and Tom have been approved for a $300,000 15-year mortgage, APR of 5.75. 15-year is 180 months. All right, that's gonna be 15 times 12. If you wanna try that one, just to see that you're good, that one should be 2491.23, and then the interest is gonna be that times 180 minus the 300,000, so 2491.23 times 180 minus 300,000. $421.40. Okay, so guys, notice how much interest was paid for this. So the 15-year, you're not going to be paying as much interest. So that is definitely an advantage, right? Okay. All right, property taxes and real estate taxes. We all pay this, right? Homeowners insurance covers damage to the home. Another term you need to be familiar with is what's called escrow. So the bank collects that money to pay for your insurance and your property taxes. So just as your employer helps you with paying your taxes to the government, when you take out a loan to pay off your house, the bank is going to collect money to help you pay for your insurance and your property taxes. Right? The bank pays those bills for the homeowner when they are due. That is how it happens most of the time. In some instances, you end up having to pay your own property taxes if you make some certain, there's all kinds of weird contractual types things that happen, right? Okay. Notice what this is saying. This is assessed value. So it says the assessed value of the Weber's family house is $186,000. The annual property tax rate is 21.5% of the assessed value. So what would be the property taxes? So we're just doing, I'm sorry, I said 21.5, 2.15. Whoa, that was terrible. 0.0215. I can't read. Times that 186,000. Right? So, don't know if you guys have heard about how crazy home insurance prices have become of late, but they're increasing crazily, like to the point where people are having to find new insurance companies because they can't afford what they have right now, that type of thing. So if you get a chance and you think about it, ask your parents how much the home insurance has changed on the house that you're in right now. All right, let's look at a couple other examples of types of problems you're going to be doing. Bank requires them to pay homeowners insurance, property taxes, mortgage in one monthly payment. The monthly mortgage payment is this amount. Semi-annual, let's be careful about what we're reading here. Property tax bill is this, and their homeowner's insurance bill. Oops, all right, Ireland, I'm trying to highlight and I'm trying to color code here. How much is the monthly payment they make to the National Trust? All right, so let's think through this. We know we've got the 1233.56. That's probably a little hard to read. No, you can read that. Okay, good. Okay. Plus okay. So there's a couple of different ways of thinking about the when it says semi-annual. The way I like to think about this is if it's annual, then we are dividing by 12. But if it's semi-annual, then we're gonna do this twice a year instead of just once a year. So for me, that's how I tend to kind of think about this. Other people prefer to kind of think, hold on a second, I want to kind of color code this. Other people kind of think about this and realize that 2 divided by 12 can simplify to just over 6. So when they see semi-annual, then they know they're dividing by 6. But for me, I tend to, that's just kind of the thought process that makes most sense to me, is that, okay, we want to divide by 12 if we have the annual, but if it's semi-annual, then it's twice a year. Does that make sense, guys? So if you want to think of this as doing a 5206 over 6 rather than the times 2 divided by 12, you can do that too. Yeah, you'll get the same answer. So it's just a matter of how you're kind of thinking through that, right? And then the 1080, that's their annual homeowner's insurance bill, so that's divided by 12. So if we add all of that up, what do we get? 2191.23. So this next example has like a quarterly in there too, so I want to show you that example just so that you can see how that works. Okay, so for this one, there's their mortgage, quarterly property tax, semi-annual, whoops. Okay, so it's those 3 again. Okay, so we have our 950 plus the quarterly means that we're doing 34.58, and like I said, the way I think of it is let's divide by 12, but we're doing that quarterly, so that means we're going to multiply by 4. And then plus our 800 divided by 12, and that's semi-annual, so that's twice a year. Okay. So this is where, if you think about it, if it's quarterly, it's going to be divided by 3. If it's semi-annual, you're gonna divide by 6. That's kind of a personal preference, just how you think about that. Okay, so that's gonna give you, what, 2236. Guys, does that make sense? In terms of setting that up with the annual, semi-annual and all of that kind of stuff? Yeah, go quickly. Okay, last part of what we need to look at, and this is what's referred to as front-end ratio and back-end ratio. I always tend to get these confused, and it's easy to do that, so, all right. So if you notice, it says banks use several factors, including credit rating, to decide if they will lend money. The bank wants to be paid back. They want assurance that the borrowers can afford the monthly payments. There are 2 indicators that help banks decide. So they use what's referred to as the front-end ratio and then the back-end ratio, which is also referred to as the debt-to-income ratio. I don't know, how, any of you guys do finance with, who is it, Fratrick, I think? Do you guys talk about this in there or no? No, okay. Okay, so the way to remember this is that the front-end ratio considers your housing. Your back-end ratio considers everything. Okay? So if it's just housing stuff, then it's front-end ratio. If you're considering everything, it's what's referred to as back-end ratio or a debt-to-income ratio. All right, let's take a look here. The front-end ratio means we are looking at your monthly housing expenses. I gotta make this bigger. Monthly housing expenses over your monthly gross income. Monthly gross income. Remember, your monthly gross income, I have that down here, right? That's your adjusted gross income, or your annual gross income, excuse me, divided by 12. Right? Okay. And then thinking about what your monthly housing expenses are, think about what that's going to be. That's going to be your property tax, plus your insurance, your homeowner's insurance more specifically, right? Plus your mortgage. Okay, so monthly housing expenses, that's gonna be your mortgage, your insurance, your taxes. You divide that by your monthly gross income, and that's what's referred to as your front-end ratio. And for that, banks want that front-end ratio to be 28% or less. And the less is an important piece. Okay. So that is one indicator. Front-end ratio is just housing stuff. Back-end ratio, they're considering all of your monthly expenses. So credit card bill, cell phone, car payments, all of that kind of stuff. So total monthly expenses. And we'll make a list of that here in just a second off to the side. And then that is over your monthly gross income. So your total monthly expenses, think about that. That's gonna be car, if you have to pay off a loan plus the car insurance, right? It could be credit card, it could be alimony, it could be cell phone. So all of those types of expenses. So that's what's included in your total monthly expenses. So yeah, I have that written here too. So total monthly expenses, your mortgage payment, plus your property taxes, plus your homeowner's insurance. So all of the things that we considered up above, I'm trying to write fast and this is just way messy. Plus, this is the added, right? So car payment, plus credit card, all of that kind of stuff that I mentioned over here. All right, plus, etc. And once again, your monthly gross income is that AGI divided by 12. We don't need to say that again. For this one, banks often want the back end ratio to be 36% or less. I want to do, we need to do 2 of these real quick. Okay. All right. Ken and Julie have adjusted gross income of this, looking at a new house, monthly mortgage payment, semi-annual property tax, annual homeowner's insurance bill is this. Will the bank lend them the needed money to purchase the house? Okay, the only types of expenses you are given here are home type things, so this means we're doing front end ratio. Right? Okay, so we are doing 1450.22 plus 3239 over 12, but that's semi-annual, so times 2, plus 980 over 12, right? So that's all the housing stuff. And then we would divide that by 87.2 divided by 12. If you plug that in, you get check my math, but I got 28.5%. So technically, by what it says at that 28%, technically the answer is no. Probably in this case, the bank would work with you and probably say, well, let's see if we can find some cheaper insurance for you or something to kind of adjust some of these numbers, because that's pretty close. So I wanted you to see that because, like, I mean, some banks would probably say, nope, definitely not. Others might would probably be willing to work with you and say, let's try to adjust some things here. Insurance is really the key that is kind of adjusting, okay? So I just wanted you to be familiar with how that looks. Let's do one of these and then we are done. Let's go through all of this. Buying a house, need to figure out what they can afford. Adjusted gross income is this. Mortgage payment is this. Annual property tax is this. Homeowner's insurance is this, but then they've got car payment and credit card bill. So they're adding all of those little extras, which means this is back end ratio. Right? Okay, so we're doing our monthly mortgage plus the 9888 divided by 12. Homeowner's insurance plus 1007 divided by 12 plus 510, that's already monthly payment as they say, plus this 5100. So then we have all of that over the 166988 divided by 12. And you get about 58% there, which is not even close. So probably what they would say, what a bank would say is you need to pay off that credit card debt. And then we'll talk. Because that's what's really throwing the monkey wrench in that one, is that $5,100 a month credit card bill, right? Okay, I have it up on the board, but I will write it here also. This is 7.3. It's in the workbook. It's pages, 114 and 115. And it is, I have A through C up there, but it really is, I think that's all there is on that one. I have some letters on some of those, but I think they may not have any more than that. So check for me, but I think that's all.